Thank you for joining me for this recorded information session for the 2025-2026 Partnership Fund Program. Here's just a brief look at what I'm going to be covering today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out at the end of the presentation, or maybe pause partway through, send an email. I want to make sure you have all the information you need prior to applying for the Partnership Fund Program. So before I get started, I would like to acknowledge that the land we identify as RTO9 is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat peoples. RTO9 will honor and respect the land, the people, and the treaties. We are extremely thankful for the original tour guides of these lands and all that they have shared. All those that reside, work, and play on these lands are treaty people, and we must honor the treaties in a mutually beneficial and equitable manner. With 1 in 5 Indigenous people in Canada living in Ontario, we believe working together in a mutually beneficial manner will help all Ontarians prosper through the joint development of the tourism industry. As an ally to Indigenous people and a partner of Indigenous Tourism Ontario, RTO9 will commit to improving the socioeconomic conditions of Indigenous people through tourism by creating space for Indigenous people to tell their stories on their terms. Just a quick introduction to myself. Hi, my name is Meg Dabros. I'm the operations manager here at RTO9 and responsible for managing the Partnership Fund Program. So during the application process and throughout the delivery of your project, if you're approved for funding, I will be your main point of contact. So please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns using this contact information here. I'm also happy to connect directly with you over the phone, or we can book a one-on-one virtual meeting to chat about your project before you apply. Access to the appointment booking is available on our website. I will show you where to find that during this session. And I just want to make sure you have all the information and tools you need before deciding to apply. So please do not hesitate to reach out. So here's an overview. What is the Partnership Fund Program? So RTO9's Partnership Fund Initiative is designed to collaborate with the region's tourism businesses to grow tourism in Southeastern Ontario. This program's estimated allocation is $219,000 from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Gaming. So here are some of the main objectives of both the ministry and RTO9 through offering this program. We want to enhance tourism across the province, especially overnight stays, support the RTO as a leader in regional tourism, but also as a resource for operators in the region, maximize support for tourism at a regional level by encouraging strong partnerships, expanding the breadth and diversity of funding partners, encourage RTOs to engage industry partners to broaden their financial base and to extend reach, support a coordinated approach that aligns planning, product development, investment attraction, and workforce development in the region, assure the transparency and accountability of funding through the transfer payment agreement, and increase the economic tourism value to the region. So partner eligibility, who can actually apply for funding? So all eligible partners must be involved in the tourism industry in some capacity. Eligible businesses include for-profit tourism businesses who are either incorporated or have an active CRA business number. And Indigenous operators eligible for this program must be at least 51% plus Indigenous owned and controlled. At the time of submission of your application, for your application to be considered, you will need to provide a digital copy of either your incorporation certificate, your CRA business number, your certificate of Indian status registry number, or a Métis registry number. So businesses that are looking for funds only and aren't interested in learning or understanding how their project fits within the tourism landscape will not be considered for the program. We really want to look at businesses who are hoping to help grow the visitor economy, which in turn will make our communities vibrant places to live and work. So organizations who are ineligible to apply for funding include DMOs, DMMOs, DMPs, municipalities, museums, BIAs, chambers of commerce, other membership-based associations. The focus for this year's funding is to support the businesses and people delivering our tourism products across the region without bias. So there are some other requirements to be considered eligible for this program that you're going to want to keep in mind. One is 2 million general commercial liability insurance, with RTO9 listed as insured is a must. Your insurance company should provide you with a certificate of insurance stating such at no charge. We only require the proof of insurance after you're accepted into the program, so you don't need to provide this with your application, but it is something you want to keep in mind if you're approved for funding. All applicants must be located within the region served by RTO9. So there is a map for reference included in the guidelines if you're unsure. There's also a map that I'll be showing you on the next slide that kind of highlights the different areas of the region. We also require communication with your local DMO, DMMO, or DMP prior to applying for this program. Your DMO, DMMO, or DMP should provide you with a letter of confirmation or a letter of support to identify to the assessment team that you shared your application with them so they know what's going on. It's really crucial because they're going to be someone who can help support your product. Maybe it's financially or maybe it's just through marketing support, but it's really crucial that they know what's going on in their destination so that they can amplify the messaging. We will also require disclosure of any additional funding you may be receiving for this project, as we cannot double up on provincial funds. So here's the map of the area served by RTO9. It includes 11 destinations, and the boundaries go from basically the city of Quinte West right up to the Quebec border in the east. Again, this map is included in the guidelines, a little bit clearer in the guidelines, should you want to have a closer look at it. Those destinations served by RTO9 include the Bay of Quinte, Prince Edward County, parts of Lennox and Addington, so including Stones Mills, Greater Napanee, and Loyalist, parts of Frontenac County, so including South Frontenac and the Islands, Kingston, Thousand Islands, Gananoque, Brockville, Thousand Islands Rideau Canal Waterways, which includes North Grenville, Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, Cornwall, and Prescott Russell. One thing to note for those in Prescott Russell is that at this time you don't have a DMO or DMP or DMMO to contact for a confirmation letter. You are not obligated to submit that at this time, just because you don't have someone to go to quite yet. Once that's updated, once we have someone who could be a point of contact for you, we'll let you know. But for now, you don't need to submit that letter to accompany your application. So project categories, much anticipated project categories. So before applying, we want you to look at your proposed project through the tourism lens and think about these following questions. One, is your project going to help you drive and retain visitors from outside of your community or outside of the region? Two, is there an opportunity for them to spend money while they're here? And three, is there a way to measure the success of your project? And at what points during a project are you going to share those stories with RTO9? So our first project category is new Indigenous tourism experiences. This category is intended to help support Indigenous tourism operators get established in Southeastern Ontario and encourage partnerships and Indigenous participation between both Indigenous and non-Indigenous operators. As I've mentioned before, Indigenous operators must be 51% plus Indigenous owned and controlled to receive funding from this category. Expenses include business planning, website development, signage, design services, some marketing expenses. If you're unsure if a project or expense would be considered under this category, feel free to contact me. I also want to reiterate that this doesn't mean that you can't apply in one of the other categories if you're an Indigenous operator. This category is just intended for Indigenous operators. If you wanted to apply in photography or videography or translation, you are still eligible to apply in those categories as well. Our second category is videography and photography. And they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And in tourism, that saying could not be more true. So professionally done video and photos for your website and social media can really create a storytelling experience for potential visitors and allow them to make a connection with your location, business, or brand through a screen. So having high quality imagery is a really essential part of conveying your business's story to the world, and it helps visitors imagine themselves enjoying your experience. So some really important things to consider when applying to this category. Number one, all videography and photography must be experience-based, not product-based. So for example, having somebody in the photo experiencing your business. Applications that are intended as a product catalog, such as an online retail store, will not be considered for funding. RTO9 requires the use of an RTO9 vetted photographer, videographer for asset creation. There's a list available on the RTO9 website. I will show you where to find that. But it's really important that we utilize these photographers and videographers. We're familiar with their communication style, the quality of their assets, and their ability to manage the project. So we have a list available for you if you want to look through there, see if there's someone who fits with what you're looking to do. We just require use of them so that we know what the process is going to be with those photographers and videographers. We also require the rights-free access to all the photos and videos created during the project period, which will be shared with Destination Partners and Destination Ontario because we want to help amplify the messaging and showing off the lovely things and wonderful things you're doing in the region. Our third category is marquee and wayfinding signage. Signage is a really important part of your tourism business. If done right, it's good sign. The good signage is clear, concise, and a valuable part of your branding. It can cause confusion and frustration if visitors are unable to locate your business due to poor or non-existent signage, or in the case of a lot of our rural businesses, not much else around, hard to get people to your location. So good signage should be clear and avoid cognitive overload with too much information or excessive text or graphics. So funding under this category can include costs associated with the design and installation of building signage, directional signage for rural tourism businesses. We do ask that design proofs be submitted for approval before production because we just want to make sure that they're all going to be clear, concise, and be able to get visitors where they need to be. Our fourth and final category is translation. So by offering bilingual or multilingual content on your website, on-site signage, or during tours, you can provide a really seamless experience for visitors and make it easier for them to find the information they're looking for so they can feel confident when booking an experience with you. This is not capped at just French translation. If you're looking to put Korean on your website or Japanese or Portuguese, all of those things are eligible. It just needs to be completed through a third-party translation service. So the conditions of funding are set by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Gaming and given to the RTO to assist with the distribution of funds. Now, what are the ministry guidelines for project funding? So the ministry's definition of a partner in the context of this partnership funding model is that a partnership is defined as the agreement of the RTO to work with one or more entities on a specific project in support of the RTO's business plan. The RTO is the project lead and the partner contributions flow into the RTO. They do not flow through to the partners. So that means that the RTO 9 holds the funds for the project and pays the invoices from suppliers directly for the project. The RTO 9 does not send funds to partners. It's an important thing to keep in mind. So projects may receive up to 50% funding for their eligible project. However, it's very important to note that this is not a grant program. It's a partnership program. So it requires a 50-50 funding split with the applicant. So for example, if you have a $10,000 project, your organization would contribute $5,000 and the RTO 9 would contribute the other $5,000. It's also really important to note that this funding is inclusive of HST. So when you're budgeting out your project, be sure you're accounting for HST on invoices. The minimum matching amount for this project period would be $1,500. So that's a total budget of $3,000. And the maximum matching amount is $15,000, which is a budget of $30,000. So the ministry sets guidelines for the use of the funds. I'm going to run through some of the ineligible expenses through this funding. There is a document on the website that highlights these ineligible funds and touches on some examples of eligible costs for each project category. I will again show you where to find that on the RTO 9 website. But in terms of ineligible expenses, this includes grants and flow through to other organizations, charitable fundraising, advocacy, donations to political parties or groups, capital costs associated with permanent structures. The exception to this is wayfinding signage, competition prizes, prize money, or funds being paid to competition participants, previously incurred expenses, the refundable portion of the HST or other refundable expenses, expenses that do not directly relate to the delivery of your project, in-kind donations, funds for operational, so examples, salaries or wages or insurance, and alcohol, food, or swag items. It's also really important to note that based on the ministry guidelines, the RTO 9 cannot reimburse a partner directly. This means you cannot run an expense through on your personal or company credit card and get reimbursed for the expense. We require an invoice from a third-party supplier addressed to RTO9 along with their information for an electronic funds transfer, and the RTO9 will pay the supplier directly. It's really important that they are able to take direct deposit. We also require any partners who entered into a contract with RTO9 to pay their 50% contribution within 30 days of signing the contract, or we reserve the right to reallocate funds to another project. Payment has to be made to the RTO9 electronically. We don't accept cash or checks. You can pay your 50% contribution via EFT, which is between your bank account and ours, or you can send an e-transfer using bradic@region9tourism.ca. However, if you're using this method, we just ask that you include your project name and invoice number in the notes section of your e-transfer just to make sure we get it allocated to the right place. I have found that e-transfer tends to be the preferred method for a lot of small businesses because it comes with minimal or no cost to the business to do the e-transfer. So we can only accept those electronic payment methods for your 50% contribution, and all payments that are being made as expenses through the project must be made to a third-party vendor that has no affiliation with the recipient or contracted partner. So upon entering into a contract with the RTO9, all recipients are required to acknowledge the support received by the use of the Ontario Yours to Discover logo on all consumer-related materials, the Ontario Trillium logo on industry-related materials. We reserve the right to approve all logo placements prior to public release or production. Any public announcements, media releases require pre-approval from the RTO9, and all the assets I've listed here in terms of logos will be provided to you through Basecamp after you've been approved for funding. Basecamp is the software we use to keep everything organized for your project. So once you've been approved, here are some important next steps regarding documentation. We require a signed contract and supporting payment within 30 days of receipt of the contract. You must attend mandatory Basecamp training for your project. Again, that's the software we use. The training session is maybe an hour of time one day, just to make sure that you understand how the software works. We need you to notify us within 30 days of your project closing if you're going to use all of the funds or not. All invoices and supporting documentation must be uploaded to the Partners Basecamp folder, which we'll provide to you. And if anything you can take away from this is that we absolutely require the signed contract, your 50% contribution, and your certificate of insurance listing the RTO9 as additionally insured prior to paying any of your invoices for the project. So you really want to make sure that you're getting those things done as soon as possible to avoid delays in payment to your suppliers and to ensure that the project can begin on time. So because the ministry is funding the program, RTO9 is expected to meet their requirements for RFPs depending on the nature of the expense. So for any expense that's under $5,000, you must indicate that a search for best value of dollar was completed. And anything over $5,000 will require an RFP process to take place, which we recommend that a minimum window of 10 to 14 days, just for qualified quotes to be submitted. And then you must provide at least 3 written quotes for the expense. The partner will permit RTO9, if required, to audit or verify the information submitted at the discretion of the province. So project reports, what's required after the project is underway. Once you're approved for funding, you are going to be required to submit some ministry reports. We have a mid-year and final report to reconcile the use of the funds and provide some insight into the projects. These reports typically include a description of the activities linked to the project as outlined in your application, digital copies of marketing materials and links to social media, proof of acknowledgement of the RTO9 ministry funding support, explanation of any variance between your application and what was actually completed in the report. And if it's after October 31st, we will require some budget forecasting for your remaining expenses that are going to be recurring between December 1st and February 13th, 2026, just to ensure that you have everything allocated and that you're going to be spending all the funds. So what's expected of applications to the program? So these requirements are mandatory for all projects entering into an agreement with RTO9 for this program. So the partner agrees to compliance with the RTO9 procurement policy. That's the quotes for any expense over $5,000. Partner agrees to incorporate the provided Ontario logos in the project where applicable and compliance with acknowledgements. The proposal is consistent with the RTO9's business plan. Compliance with program accounting, submittal of invoices for payment, documentation and reporting of procedures, and a maximum of one application per business. So when you're submitting your application, priority is going to be given to those that are submitted from private sector businesses. Promote overnight visitation, increasing the length of stay. Include 2 or more partners that are financially committed to the project, in addition to the RTO9 when possible. Having clearly defined and measurable goals, and those who have not received funding through the Partnership Fund program within the past 3 years. It does not make you ineligible to receive funding if you have received funding in the last 3 years. It's just that priority is going to be given to new applicants or those who have not received funding in the past 3 years. So what's next? So the intake period will be opening on March 3rd. Mark it in your calendars if you haven't already. This intake period is intended for projects that will take place between May 1st, 2025 and February 13th, 2026. There is only one intake period this year, so make sure that you get your application in on time. It will close March 31st, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. For fairness, we cannot accept any applications after this deadline. The application and all of the guidelines are available on the RTO9 website. You're very strongly encouraged to read all of the guidelines and important information before deciding to apply. Applications must be submitted through the online portal. Please do not submit your application to me personally. Submit them through the online form. That being said, if you run into any issues with the online form, please don't hesitate to contact me. And again, there is a maximum of one application to be submitted per business. So now that you've watched this recording, here's the next steps of the process for you. If you haven't done so, please read through the 2025-2026 Partnership Fund guidelines. This document contains all the information you need to know about the program. Make a point of connecting with your local DMO, DMMO, or DMP and notify them of your application and obtain a letter of confirmation or a letter of support from them to include with your application. Then once the application period opens on the 3rd, fill in the provided application form. Upload a copy of your DMO, DMMO, DMP letter, and a copy of either your proof of incorporation, your CRA business number, certificate of Indian status registry number, or a Métis registry number. That is the only documentation you are required to submit at the time of your application. So then after the application window closes on March 31st, all of the applications will be submitted for assessment to ensure that the ministry guidelines are being met. All applicants will be contacted via email regarding the status of their application, so make sure you have an accurate email address associated with your application. This will happen regardless of if you're approved or denied. We do not want to leave anyone in limbo about their funding status. We try to do this within 25 days of submission of applications. That's when the window closes. So within 25 days of the application window closing being March 31st is when we will contact everyone regarding whether they've been approved or denied. It's not about the date you submit your application, but when the application window closes. I just request that you don't contact us asking for an update during that 25-day window. We promise we'll let you know as soon as possible. We're busy working away in the background, making sure that everything's getting assessed properly. So we'll let you know as soon as we know. So just some important reminders before I finish up. So all funding is subject to RTO9 receiving their transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Gaming. Projects cannot start without the receipt of a signed contract, the submission of all the required documents, and receipt of the partner's 50% contribution. This is all due within 30 days of receiving the contract from RTO9. All invoices must be made out to RTO9 with EFT information, so suppliers must accept direct deposit. and we cannot reimburse you for any payments made during this process. Guidelines and all the other information, which I highly encourage you go read as soon as possible, is available on the RTO9 website. I will show you where to find that here on the next slide. And you can find some example applications of both poor and good applications on our website on the partnership funding page. The online form is going to save automatically, but you must access the form from the same device in order for it to pull up the information you already input. So I highly recommend adding the form page to your bookmarks bar, your favorites bar in your browser, just in order to have quick access to the application form. That being said, you can always access the form again on the Partnership Fund page on the RTO9 website. Just as long as you're using the same device, it should take you back to where you left off, regardless of your method for accessing the form. You can also always start a Word document and then copy and paste your answers. I highly recommend looking at the application examples and maybe consider putting together your application using the information on the example applications. And now I'm just going to quickly go through the application form and where to find everything on the RTO9 website. I'm just going to exit here. So on the RTO9 website, you'll see that there's a partnerships tab. If you click partnership funding, it takes you to the partnership funding page. It has the definition of a partnership, who's eligible to apply. Here you can book a one-on-one appointment with me, whether that's virtual or over the phone. I'm happy to do either. You can read the guidelines, which I very strongly encourage everyone to do. There's a program quick facts sheet. Also, it highlights some eligibility requirements. If you want to have a quick look through that, maybe you're not eligible to apply. It might help eliminate that so that you don't go and read the full guidelines document, because it can be quite a few pages. So if you look at the quick facts, you're not eligible, it saves you from having to go and read the full guidelines. So this is where the application is going to show up, the application button. For right now, it's not there because the application window hasn't opened yet, but this is where you'll find it. There's a budget template here. It's just a Word document so that you can put your budget line items in. Reminder that you should include HST in all your line items. Partnership fund guidelines, so you can view the guidelines again here. There's also that document I mentioned about ineligible and eligible expenses, just so you can get a good idea of what might be eligible per project category. For those interested in applying for photography and videography, here is the list of videographers and photographers we have. There's also a third page that has some modeling agencies. If you're looking to hire models out, you're also free to get volunteers if that's something that you're able to do. But the photographers and videographers are the ones that are vetted by us that we are asking partners and applicants to utilize. The information sessions, if you wanted to go and register for a live session, you can do so here. Our first one was February 25th. And there's 3 additional live sessions. If you want to go and check and see if there's still one at the time of you watching this recording, you can do so here. Your GMO, DMMO, DMP letter of support or confirmation, you can find your local contact here. I'll click through and show that in a second. And application assistance. So here's the good application. Here's the poor application that I mentioned. If you want to go and have a look at those, all of the questions available on that are the questions that will be on the actual application. So if you wanted to get started early before filling in your form, you can go and have a look at that and get started with the Word document. So if you're unsure of who your DMO, DMMO, or DMP might be, you're just going to click this button to say find your local contact, and it will take you to our sub-regional partners page. So these are each of our destination partners. Each one has contact information available. Again, if you're in Prescott Russell, we don't require a letter of confirmation or a letter of support from your DMO, DMMO, or DMP, simply because you don't have one at this exact moment in time. Once that changes, we'll update this information. But for now, you can forego that letter. If you're from anywhere else in the region, you have a DMO or DMP or DMMO, we really strongly encourage you to get connected with them sooner rather than later, because you will require a letter from them. So for example, if you're in Brockville, the city of Brockville, you click Brockville, and here is the information for Kelly, who runs the Brockville Tourism office. So it has their website, it has her email, and it has her phone number. So I would really encourage reaching out and get the ball rolling for the letter as soon as possible. Just makes things easier for you and makes things easier on the teams who are getting connected with you, and because they might not be just connecting with you, they might have a bunch of other applicants who are also looking to get letters of support. So you want to make sure you're getting in there early and giving people enough time to write these letters. So here is an example application. This is what it's going to look like when you go to apply on the online form. The first thing that's really important is that we just need to make sure you've done 2 of the following things so that you are aware of what is eligible and what is not eligible in the program. Nothing worse than putting a whole bunch of ineligible expenses in your budget, and then when you hear back from us about your application, a whole bunch of things have been removed from your budget because it wasn't eligible. So we really want to make sure that you've either read through the guidelines, you've attended a virtual session, you've watched this information session, or perhaps you've connected with me one-on-one to discuss your project, so you have an idea of what is eligible, what isn't eligible, and if your project itself is eligible. So we just want to make sure you've done at least 2 of the following things. So just select the 2 things that you ended up doing, and then click next, and it will take you to what your business identity is. Now, if you've read the guidelines and you're watching this information session, you now know that incorporated for-profits and for-profits with a CRA business number, Indigenous tourism businesses that are at least 51% plus Indigenous owned and controlled are eligible for this program. Anybody else is ineligible to apply. If you go through the application process and you select something that is an ineligible organization or business, it will automatically take you to the ineligible page, just so that you're not spending all this time filling in an application for something that you're not going to be eligible for. There's nothing worse than spending a whole bunch of time and resources putting in an application when you aren't eligible to apply. So make sure you're selecting what your business is, and then just click the next page. And it's just some basic applicant information. So your business, your address, which destination you're a part of, your website, who the contact person should be, a telephone and email address for that contact person. Make sure it is correct so that you get notified about your funding status. If you've had any past projects with us, you put them here. And this is where you would upload your proof of incorporation, your CRA business number, your certificate of Indian status registry number or Métis registry number. It's just going to click upload file. Here it says replace file because I've gone through and put examples in, but you're going to click upload file. It's going to open your file explorer and you're just going to select the document that contains that information and upload it here. And then this is just a reminder that while you don't need to submit it at this time, we will eventually require $2 million commercial general liability insurance covering the RT09. Just a reminder to keep in mind so that when you get to that part, if you're approved for funding, you're already aware that it's something that we're going to need. So this is just general application information. We just want to know what project category you're applying under and what the name of your project is. Now, all of the categories have the same general questions. Videography and photography will have some additional questions just to ensure that you understand all of the parameters around it. But it's a general application, so all the questions remain the same, minus the additional photographer, videography, compliance with sharing files, using vetted photographers, things like that. It leads into our actual application. So the first question would be project description and objectives. So we just want a description of the project, some of your objectives and goals. We go a little bit further into detail into some of these later on in the application. We want to know how this project is going to assist your business with revenue creation, and explain the rationale and demand for your project. So assessment and performance measures, we want to make sure that you're evaluating your project in a way that it's easy to determine if your goals are being met. So for example, if you're doing photography, videography, let's say you want 150 still images, and you want, for 15-second videos for use on social media, things that are clear, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely, things that you can expressly say, this is what we would like to have by this date, things that make it clear for goals. Project timelines, there's only 6 slots here, but it's just we want to know the important activities that are going to be undertaken, when approximately they're going to occur, and when you're hoping to have them wrapped up. It's really important to note that we need everything completed by February 13th, 2026. Other financial contributions. So if you have anybody else who's contributing to your project, you put them in here. If you don't, you just put NA in the first box. We will require a detailed budget. We need to know how much you're asking for and what expenses you're looking to get covered. On the R209 Partnership Fund page, I pointed out the budget template. You can use that one as long as it's showing your budget line items, what the total is going to be, and how much you're asking from R209 to cover each of those things. The maximum we can cover is 50%. And just a note here that the minimum contribution is 1,500, so that's a budget of 3,000, and the maximum is 15,000, so that's 30,000. And again, costs are inclusive of HST, so keep that in mind when you're doing your budget. Same thing, you just click the upload file, select the file from your computer, and it would upload here. So project economic benefits, we want to understand how the project's going to benefit the local or regional economy in terms of tourism development. So are you going to be creating jobs? Is it going to have tourism growth? Is what you're highlighting going to draw visitors into the region and have them stay overnight? A sustainability plan for this project. Let's say you're doing translation and you're saying this year we're going to add French to our website, and in future years we're hoping to expand that to also include Japanese or Korean. And any partner businesses who are going to be contributing to the project, you can list them here. Here's where you're going to upload that letter that you're getting from your DMO, DMMO, or DMP. Same thing. Click upload file, select it from your computer. Communications plan, we want to know how you're going to be promoting your project and how you're going to be recognizing the support from the ministry and from the R209. This includes media releases. Let's say we're doing a media release, you're going to be contacting your local papers, you're going to have a release, or let's say you're posting things on social media. We need to know what you're putting on, what your plans are, how you're going to acknowledge the funding support from the ministry and from R209. If you need to expand on anything, you can pull the corners of these, make them a little bit bigger. Management and support plan. So we want to know what your business structure is, what experience you have, if you have staff resources identified to be allocated directly to this project. We just don't want you to get into a situation that, let's say you're a small business owner, you're the only one who's regularly at your business, and you get so caught up actually running your business and revenue generation that you don't have time for your project. So we want to avoid that. We don't want to add to your workload. So we want to make sure that you have plans on how to complete the project using staff resources or allocating your time a different way. We just want to know that you have some plans in place to ensure that the project is going to be a success. If you are working with other organizations or businesses, we would prefer to have some letters of support if you are working with them. What I would recommend doing is putting all of your letters of support into one file, and you can upload it here. Then this is just your final checklist, and it's just to ensure that you've included everything with your application. So you go through and check. Most pages will not let you move on without making sure that you have those things uploaded, but it's just a reminder of the things that you need and these things for if you're approved for funding, what we're going to need from you. So that's the application. If you have any questions about anything, here's how you can get in touch with me. Please don't hesitate to email or phone. Go ahead and book an appointment with me through the R209 website. And other than that, I want to say thank you for taking the time to watch this. Thank you for your interest in the program. I really look forward to seeing all the great applications that are going to be coming in. And again, if you have any questions about anything, please do not hesitate to reach out. I want to make sure you have all the tools you need, and I want to ensure that we're having a good, successful application period for you, your business, and everybody else involved. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to connecting with everybody.